For the record, from what I understand, that Yale guy is pretty popular in Japan. The old people should kill themselves guy, the Japanese professor in Yale that famously said, "Old people, I have an idea for you. Fucking kill yourself." Yeah, that guy is apparently really popular in the younger generation in Japan. So if you wanna get a good understanding of like whether or not shit is working out here, I'm gonna tell you something. It's not.
As a Japanese leftist, I can confirm that Hassan is 100% correct. The anti-elderly sentiment is rapidly growing among the Japanese youth, and it is having serious consequences in Japanese politics. Japan is currently one of the most aging societies in the world, with 30% of the population being over 65. The major causes of this declining birth rate include high education fees, gender inequality, and perhaps most importantly, wages staying low despite being the country with the longest work hours. The ruling Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled Japan for the vast majority of the post-World War II era, is obviously to blame for all of this. Instead of addressing these serious issues, the LDP has ruled as a servant for large corporations, giving them massive tax cuts while the people suffer, leading Japan to the disaster today. In late 2023, a large political scandal involving LDP came to light. It was revealed that numerous factions within the LDP had illegally stored millions of dollars, which was raised through fundraising parties in which many large corporations participated, as slush funds. While there have been countless corruption scandals involving LDP lawmakers over the years, this slush fund scandal was unique in that the LDP as a whole was deeply embedded in this scandal, not just the few bad apples. Despite the enormity of this scandal, only 3 lawmakers were indicted, and LDP refused the opposition party's demands for a robust political reform, such as eliminating corporate contributions. As a result of this scandal, support for LDP plummeted, as did the Japanese citizens' confidence in politics overall. In October of last year, the first national election after this scandal came to light was held. In the debate held between the party leaders during the election, Yuichiro Tamaki, who was leader of the Democratic Party for the People, a conservative opposition party, said something that is, well, very controversial to say the least.
で、社会保障の保険料を下げるためにはですね、我々は、高齢者医療、特に終末期医療のですね、見直しにも踏み込みました。尊厳死の法制化も含めて。で、こういったことも含めて、医療給付を抑えて、若い人の社会保険料給付を抑えることが、実は消費を活性化して、次のですね、好循環と賃金上昇を生み出すと思っています。
As you just saw, Tamaki proposed the legalization of euthanasia in the context of cutting healthcare costs. While I understand the importance of discussing euthanasia in the context of right to self-determination, that is clearly not what Tamaki did here. What he did here was to mildly suggest that the old people's lives are not worth saving, and in fact, they just waste our tax dollars. So, we should just kill them. Unfortunately, Tamaki is far from alone in this hateful rhetoric against the elders in Japan. As Hassan mentioned in the clip I played in the beginning of this video, the Japanese Yale professor Yusuke Narita is a proponent of mass suicide by the old people, saying that it is necessary to keep the society going. During the election, Narita actually talked with one of the lawmakers for DPFP on a TV program, engaged in divisive rhetoric against old people as he always does, and encouraged the DPFP to be a revolutionary army for the working generation. In addition to this anti-elderly rhetoric, during the election, Tamaki and the DPFP engaged in populist economic messaging. They used slogans like 手取り増やすからね, which means increase the net income, strongly argued for massive tax cuts, and tirelessly used social media to spread their message. As shown in the election results, this strategy clearly succeeded. While I understand that the strong populist economic messaging was probably the major factor in driving young people to vote for DPFP, it is also undeniable that their anti-elderly rhetoric was a strong factor. After the election, this tweet by a young DPFP voter went viral. In the tweet, they complained about old people's strong support for the CDP, a center-left opposition party, and argued that young people should each have 6 votes because there are so many old people. And to that I say, hot take! One person, one vote! Another example of the anti-elderly sentiment in Japanese politics is the rise of a politician named Shinji Ishimaru. Ishimaru worked as a foreign exchange analyst for an American bank, but he left the job in 2020 to run for mayor of Akitakata, his hometown. The previous mayor had resigned because of his involvement in the LDP lawmakers' corruption scandal. This paved the way for Ishimaru, who was seen as young and fresh, to win the election, beating Mineaki Takemoto, who was the former deputy mayor of Akitakata. During his term, Ishimaru went extremely viral online for his anti-elderly, anti-establishment rhetoric. Videos of Ishimaru confronting the old lawmakers in the city council have gained millions of views on YouTube. In September 2020, Ishimaru publicly condemned a lawmaker on Twitter for sleeping during the session in city council. This lawmaker was later diagnosed with sleep apnea syndrome, and he sent his diagnosis paper to Ishimaru in order to explain why he was sleeping. However, Ishimaru shredded the paper and threw them away and continued his attack against this lawmaker. The lawmaker was met with countless insults and threats by Ishimaru's supporters, and this worsened his chronic disease. In January of 2024, he passed away. In June 2024, Ishimaru resigned as a mayor to run for governor of Tokyo. In the election, he succeeded to gain support with his anti-establishment rhetoric, coming in second with more than 1.6 million votes. As you probably know, this phenomenon of corrupt politics paving the way for hateful politics is not unique to Japan. In the United States, Donald Trump, who engaged in vicious hateful rhetoric, just inaugurated as the 47th president. However, there is a huge difference between Japan and America in terms of the populist politics. In the US, hateful, faux populists like Donald Trump are not the only people with momentum. There was, and still is, an actual, decent, progressive populist movement to transform America. As you all know, the populist left messaging rapidly became prominent when Bernie Sanders almost clutched to the Democratic nomination in 2016 and 2020. While it is very depressing to know that the whole establishment colluded to defeat this movement, at least there was a glimpse of hope. In Japan, there is practically no movement like this gaining momentum. Well, actually, there is one populist party called Reiwa Shinsengumi, which was founded by actor turned politician Taro Yamamoto in 2019. While it is true that Yamamoto's style of messaging is somewhat similar to Bernie Sanders, Reiwa is far from being real progressive populist movements like Bernie's. In 2020, Tsuneki Onishi, who was a candidate for Reiwa in 2019 election, was heavily criticized for saying that it is necessary to quote, select which lives to save and that the elders should die first. Even though this remark by Onishi strongly contradicted Reiwa's platform, which claims to save all people, including the elders, Reiwa initially said that they wanted to give him a second chance. The video of Yamamoto explaining the situation was flooded with comments defending Onishi by Reiwa's supporters. Although Reiwa later purged Onishi, this incident clearly shows the cultish nature of this party. In addition to this, Genki Sudo, who is a mixed martial artist turned populist independent politician, explicitly engaged in anti-elderly rhetoric when he was rallying for Yamamoto in 2020 when Yamamoto was running for governor of Tokyo.
ソーシャルディスタンスの女王小池さん、良識派の代表宇都宮さん、67歳、73歳、そして我らの山本太郎さん45歳。僕は決して年齢を否定しているわけでもありません。ただ今のような状態は東京都だけでなく国も世界もこんな苦しい状況はやはり若さとパワーが必要なんです。
Neither Yamamoto nor his supporters pushed back against this rhetoric. So even though they pretend to be against anti-elderly rhetoric, I do not believe that cultish party like Reiwa Shinsengumi is a real force for social and economic justice. The only parties in Japan that truly push back against this anti-elderly rhetoric are Constitutional Democratic Party, Japanese Communist Party, and Social Democratic Party. Sadly, none of these parties have as much momentum as Reiwa or DPFP. For a Japanese leftist like myself, things are not looking too great. Whether it be the elders, LGBTQ+ community, immigrants, women, people of color, whether it be in the United States, Japan, or anywhere else, until we are all free from bigotry, our struggle for justice continues. For more content like this, please consider supporting me on Ko-fi. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment as well. Thank you so much for watching till the end.